Welcome back, everybody, and happy Thursday. I'm meteorologist Andrea Myers, bringing you your daily hail forecast, sponsored as always by C3 Group, Merlin Law Group, American Contractor, and Atlas. They're linked in the description for this video for you guys, so go ahead and check them out. Today, we just got kind of more of the same deal. It's those popcorn storms that are going to be over a few different regions of the U.S., so we'll talk about that. Then getting into tomorrow, kind of the same deal. We could potentially have more concentrated storm activity for the next couple of days across the Northeast and parts of the East. And then, you know, Texas, Dallas, you guys are in a risk for tomorrow. It's pretty low end, though. I'm just going to give you a spoiler alert, but we'll get to it as well. And then talking about the tropics, Hurricane Lee has formed, and now we have Tropical Depression 14 right behind it. The tropics have heated up. It is kind of peak season for that, though. So getting into all of that here in a second. But before I tell you about the weather, I got to tell you about the OU versus SMU tailgate that we're having. This is going to be, if you're in Norman and know the area, it's along Jenkins Avenue. If you're not from Norman, that's just right along where the stadium is. And you'll see a bunch of big white tents, and we're in tent 112, or just look for the Hail, Trace, and Beacon sign. That's where our tailgate it's going to be. We're going to have free food, free beer, and we'll have the game on. It's a great time. I think it was really packed last time. I wasn't actually there, but we had our marketing manager there as well, and it went really great. We got to see a lot of you guys talk about the weather, talk about roofing, and sports primarily. So get out there to the OU versus SMU tailgate we're having on September 9th, and we'll continue to have those every home game for OU this season. So looking forward to seeing you guys there. Now, for our weather, getting into all that, it's pretty clear across most of the nation. We got a little bit of severe activity happening in Arkansas right now. That's part of that low-end deal that's happening into today. But across the Ohio Valley, that's really the only place with more concentrated, interesting weather going on right now. A lot of cloud cover going through like Michigan, Ohio, this whole Ohio Valley Midwest area. And then some severe weather starting to develop through the Northeast. And again, it's kind of going to be the Northeast show for any sort of focused severe activity for the next couple of days here. So watching that. But temperature-wise, I mean, it's really, really gorgeous if you're anywhere in that trough. So this is what's driving those storms through the Northeast. That's kind of the reason we're seeing that concentrated activity through there. That's what's keeping y'all cool. 62 degrees from that in Minneapolis. Out behind that, 71 in Fort Wayne. 92 in New York City, waiting to cool off after that cold front passes through. And then behind it, we have this interesting kind of little feature in the jet stream, just that little shortwave trough, just that baby trough that's dipping down. That'll help us get some storms out through the Central Plains, and then anything that can kind of extend down south could potentially go severe, and that's, you know, it gets less and less concentrated as it gets further and further away from any large-scale forcing. So that's kind of our setup into today. Humidity-wise, it's really not that bad for this time of year. I mean, we're sitting at a little muggy through a lot of the Central Plains and even parts of Texas here. Getting more humid, of course, once you get down towards the Gulf Coast and out in the east where that cold front hasn't reached through yet. But again, really not bad, just thanks to that large trough that's heading through the Ohio Valley. Once it kind of makes its way through, tomorrow we'll have some time for that humidity to build back into the Central Plains. So it might feel a little bit stickier out once you're, you know, further away from that large trough passing through. But for today, at least, we're sitting in those nicer conditions for a lot of the Central Plains. Now, for the pop-up storms through the Central Plains and the south, okay, we got some stuff popping up around 5 p.m. In terms of more activity happening through Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas. And then we'll have a little bit more happening through like Nebraska and South Dakota by around 7. But I mean, coverage-wise, there's just not a ton through either area here. So low-end chances for any type of severe weather through both of those risk areas into today. Things are going to track to the southeast and should pretty much taper off after dark. Now, through the overnight hours, we'll have a second round coming through Kansas and Oklahoma. That could potentially produce some severe weather as well, but that is going to be well after dark into the overnight hours. Then for New England, different story here. Already got some severe weather ongoing. Should see a couple of more cells popping up by around 5 p.m. Eastern time. Those are all going to lift up off to the northeast, and we'll see more coverage and more intensity on those storms into this afternoon and evening, and could potentially see hail and strong winds possible through that area into today. So for your hail forecast, it's really going to be limited to this area down in the southern plains where we got a little bit more forcing from, convective instability, just how hot it is. It's lifting things up into the atmosphere. And then we've got that large-scale instability from that trough pushing things out here that could potentially get us some hail into today. So if you guys are from like Tulsa and Fort Smith, that's going to be a low-end chance for you from that overnight wave of storms. And then from Shreveport to New Orleans, low-end chance for you guys from the stuff happening during the day. Either way, it's going to be really scattered and maybe up to some quarters to half dollars for either of you. Then into the New England states, still low end for hail, probably looking like more of a wind threat into today, but anywhere from Burlington down into DC and a little bit further south could potentially get those quarters with storms tracking through. Now for wind, we're going to include our Nebraska, South Dakota risk, as well as much more of the southeast, kind of just that whole eastern area there. So if you're in Ainsworth to Lincoln, could potentially see some high wind gusts from that little complex tracking through. And then same deal, kind of what we talked about earlier for Tulsa all the way down into New Orleans for those storms into this afternoon, evening, and overnight. Then off into New England. The best chance to see severe wind into today is going to be from DC all the way up into Burlington. So like Albany, you guys are in it, Binghamton, Scranton, that whole corridor right there is where we could potentially see those higher winds with those little baby bands of storms that are going to be lifting up to the northeast through that area into this afternoon and evening. Then down into, North Carolina all the way down into the Florida Panhandle. It's going to be a little bit more scattered, so low-end chance, but still a chance to see some showers, some thunder, and possibly get some high winds into today. So that should help cool you off. And then into tomorrow, we're just back to those storms here and there. Montana's going to have just kind of activity going on throughout the day that could potentially produce some hail or wind. And then down into Texas. So if you guys are our Dallas roofers, again, I don't want to hype this up any for you. It's not going to be anything crazy as it looks right now. We're going to have that first wave kind of moving through into the overnight tonight. Should intensify a little bit by tomorrow afternoon with some of those storms tracking through Louisiana. As that heads down to the south, we'll see a little bit more development into the overnight through Oklahoma and kind of that Red River area tracking down towards Dallas, so that's where your risk is coming from right now. But it is late overnight. You don't tend to see that daytime instability, so we'll see what we can get out of those storms by 4 a.m. into tomorrow through Saturday, and then all that tracks down through East Texas. So potential to get some hail and high winds for you, more potential to just see some heavy rain, and again some cooling rain, which is, I'm rooting for cool weather right now if you can't tell. So then last but not least, the focus for our risk area is going to be for the New England states. There go those storms, again, like today, tracking up to the northeast by around 4 p.m. Eastern. They're going to kind of lift up, and then we'll see things spreading down to the southwest a little bit more coverage, more intensity once again, and a potential to see that hail and see those high winds into tomorrow through that region. So for your hail forecast, we got all three. Right now it's still quarters to half dollars across the board here, but if you're from Butte to Billings all the way to the North Dakota, South Dakota border, you could potentially see that severe hail and wind into tomorrow. This is also going to be for hail as well as wind risks into tomorrow. Tulsa down into Shreveport, Dallas, and a little bit further south could potentially get those quarters to half dollars with those few waves of storms tracking through. And then from Virginia to Maine, could potentially get some severe hail as well for you guys, and wind. So looking at both risks. Now, heading more towards the tropics, this is Tropical Depression 14. We were watching this a little bit yesterday for development. If you guys were on yesterday's show, looks much better today, tracking off to the west-northwest. Potential to see this form into the next named storm behind Lee. Speaking of Lee, there it goes, has finally gotten itself together in the past few hours. You can watch that eye form and watch how quickly it intensifies. Just over the past few hours, you can see just kind of a blob of a storm tracking into a beautiful symmetrical storm with a nice eye. And Lee is expected to continue intensifying like that for the next little bit here as it continues off to the northwest. So getting back to Lee in a second, going back to 14 right now. Right now it's only doing 35 miles an hour, so still a tropical depression. Expected to become a tropical storm here soon, and then potential to form into a Cat 1 storm as it goes off to the west-northwest. Shouldn't really impact any land masses. Now we are watching Lee specifically as it gets closer to the Windward Islands, as it gets closer to Puerto Rico, potential for the Bahamas, tracking up that way. So keeping a very close eye on what is now a Category 2 hurricane, Lee, at 105 miles an hour this afternoon. As that moves up quickly, and look at that, it jumps to a Category 4 very quickly. Just it's not working with a lot of limitations right now, and we'll show you that in a second. But it's expected to very quickly be able to jump up in wind speeds and intensity, and then potential to be the first Cat 5 of the season at 160 miles an hour on Friday. So watching to see if that verifies for Lee as it moves into favorable conditions for continued development. Now, potential to see that again drop down in intensity as it moves into potentially more wind shear headed towards the Bahamas, and we'll see if that upper air pattern steers it kind of out of the way of the U.S. Right now, forecast models are kind of having it lift up to the north before it hits the East Coast. That would be some good news, but you know, this is Monday, it's a little further out, so we're going to keep updating you guys on what happens with Lee as that time frame gets closer. But again, this is what it's working with right now, sea surface temperature-wise, 86 degrees, 85 over just north of Haiti, the Dominican Republic, buoy 41016 or whatever. But really nice warm water, the bottom line, not limiting it there. And then for heat potential, again, this is kind of like for hail, this is kind of like the Cape, but it's for hurricanes. So, you know, the warmer the values, the more intensity these storms can tend to track into. And right north of the Windward Islands, Puerto Rico, Haiti, Dominican Republic, this whole corridor is starting to work into higher and higher values tracking east. So again, favorable conditions in that regard. What we're watching right now is wind shear. It needs to be near these hot pink areas to continue developing. And as it moves that way, it's potentially going to see a little bit of a decrease in those favorable, it's going to see more wind shear as it tracks eastward or westward potentially towards the Bahamas and towards, you know, Haiti, Dominican Republic. So watching that, see if it hits any wind shear issues as it moves that way, but really right now that's the only limitation in its intensity, and we'll see what that upper air pattern does in terms of steering the storm towards or away from the U.S. So we'll let you guys know what happens as Lee continues off to the west-northwest. If you guys want to follow us, we're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can hit See First on Facebook so you never miss a live video. Smash that subscribe button everywhere else. And go ahead and check out our stories. We try to post up-to-date information as often as possible on our Facebook and Insta stories. And then if you want to get in contact with us, go ahead and scan the QR code up above me or click the link in the description to this video. That gets you access to all of our national live severe weather mapping products. Again, our mapping team is up watching these storms develop and continuing to track them as they go severe hail, wind, tornado, hurricane. They're doing it all 24/7 live. So if you guys want access to that and to know where severe weather is hitting and when, go ahead and scan that QR code. And if you want more information, you can give us a call at 855-334-4245. Email us at info@hailtrace.com or check out hailtrace.com for more details. And we'll be back tomorrow with more info, but for now, I'm meteorologist Andrea Myers. Thanks for watching.